success, wealth, recognition. Gary Cooper had it all, lost it all, then turned a revolutionary discovery into the success paradox. Here's Gary.
Hi, I'm Gary. Thank you for joining me. I worked my entire life to achieve success, and it didn't feel like success. In fact, it felt everything opposite of that. So I wrote a book because I wanted to help people avoid all the mistakes that I made. I'm not a writer. I'm a normal guy who found a way out of the trap of success and found a way for success to work, not only for business, but for me personally and my family. What I realized is I wasn't unique. There are so many people just like me, and one of them is my first guest. Her name is Laura Gassner Otting. She's an accomplished author, keynote speaker. She is a career expert who has spent 25 years studying leaders and guiding them through massive moments in their lives. Her latest book, Wonderhell, is a must-read for anyone who has experienced success and still feels hungry for more, just like I was. Laura describes Wonderhell as that strange gap that sometimes opens up between the achievement of a goal and whatever comes right after it. Today, she is going to share her insights on how to navigate Wonderhell and emerge stronger and even more fulfilled on the other side. Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited. I have spent a lot of time researching you and studying about Wonderhell. A lot of people get to Wonderhell through pain. What brought you to Wonderhell?
So it's really interesting that you should ask the question about pain, because I think that a lot of times people do get to Wonderhell through pain, but often the same feeling, we experience it when we have joy or excitement or promise or potential. And, when we suddenly see a version of ourselves that we didn't think was possible in these moments, it feels exciting, but it also feels really painful. So, Wonderhell is all about that moment where you suddenly have the success and you thought everything would get easier. Like, oh my gosh, when I'm successful, it'll be so simple. Like I'll be like sailing, with momentum, with wind in my back. And then all of a sudden you're there and it actually doesn't get any easier. In fact, it gets harder. And so even though it feels great, it also feels terrible because it's not meeting our expectations. So I do think a lot of people get to this moment through pain.
I was watching one of your podcasts, I believe it was at Google, and it was so funny and so spot on because I did get through what you call Wonderhell, which I love that word, by the way. And you said most people get to this thing, they said, I'll be happy when, live, love, laugh, keeping up with the Joneses, and how does that impact Wonderhell? And you were talking about your kid's photo, and social media. And oh my gosh, I chased I'll be happy when forever until it almost killed me. It did end up with pain with me, but I was this achievement junkie. You talk about all of your clients that these guys and girls were very, very successful people that you worked with for 20 years, right?
Yeah. So it's funny that the talk at Google that you mentioned, it was a keynote that I gave at the author talks at Google when my last book, Limitless, came out. And there's a signature story I tell in that book about the first day of school where, it's my job to travel all over the world to give keynote speeches at conferences and corporations and colleges. And that meant I had to do a lot of fancy dancing to be around for those really important days of my kids' lives, including the science fair and prom and the music recital and the big game and, of course, the first day of school. And so I tell this story about how on the first day of school, I used to move mountains to be there every day so I could get that photo. The photo that I would post on social media to show the world that I could have it all. I was the world's best mother. I could have this career and be a great parent. And the story that I tell is about how on this one particular year, my children didn't stop bickering long enough for me to get that photo. And so I just let them have it. I mean, I yelled at them with everything in my being. And then when I went to pick them up at the end of school, I had this 17-point speech prepared because, I'm a professional speaker. So of course I had a speech prepared. And the kids got in the car and they were like, Mom, it was the first day of school. Like we had new classes, new teachers, new friends. Like we were kind of nervous. Like maybe we weren't at our best. And my little one, my younger one, who's about to leave for college now, was like, yeah, and I know you had a chapter due to your publisher and maybe it wasn't going so well. So maybe you weren't at your best either. And it was like, oh man, they were so right. And so rather than having this, this punishment, we decided to have a do-over. And the next morning we got up, they showered, I made breakfast, everybody wins. And I got that photo and I posted it to social media, but I posted to social media with this line, happy second day of school. And I talked about how when I didn't get that picture on the first day, I was chasing the approval of people who I didn't even really care about, and at the detriment of my own family. And I thought if I could just do that and I could put it up there and I could fit everyone else's definition of success, the have it all mom, the have it all CEO, then I would be happy. And it turns out that what I realized was that my definition of success wasn't that perfect and curated family photo. It was, in fact, having the kind of family who could talk to each other when we were at our very best, but who could also call each other out when we were at our very worst. And it was in that moment that I sort of realized that I had been chasing all the wrong things. So like, I'll be happy when I get the photo. I'll be happy when I get the promotion. I'll be happy when I lose 10 pounds. Like the I'll be happy when, it just convinces us that we are one purchase, one diet, one promotion, one social media post away from finally being happy. And that's garbage.
Laura, I'm telling you, I think you and I were separated at birth. You gave another interview or a speech where you were talking about when you were 21 and you were in law school and you were doing that because you thought that was the right thing. And then you drop out and you go work with Bill Clinton and help him get elected. And you do that. Fast forward, you do the same thing with your kid's photo. I did the exact same thing my whole life. It took me until I was 45 to hear some guy tell me, compare yourself to yourself. And I was like, what does that look like? And he said, are you better today than you were yesterday? And that's what you were saying in one of your interviews and in your book, Limitless. You have Wonderhell and you also have Limitless. I mean, you were really passionate about your cause.
Yeah,
And
it's true.
Limitless, you said, I heard compare yourself to yourself. And you said not everybody gets a vote in your life. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's funny because that was a little bit of a throwaway line in the book. I spoke at an event where Robin Roberts of Good Morning America was the main keynote, and I was sort of one of the undercards. And she had picked up my book and she read it on the flight home, and then she tweeted about it to, 5 million followers. It's time to stop giving votes in our lives to people who shouldn't even have voices. And that line became like a signature line from the book where people just quoted it and tweeted it and loved on it so much. And it's funny because, you've just written a book and, you never know what the lines are. Like you think that there are lines in the book that mean a lot to you that nobody picks up on. And then there's others that you just sort of write and then they resonate like crazy. But what happens is all of us have had people in our lives who have told us what success means, whether it's, for me, it was the fourth grade teacher who told me I was really argumentative and I'd be a good lawyer. Right. Of course, I told her she was wrong because, I'm argumentative.
Yeah, you had to argue back.
I had to argue back. But then in my brain, subconsciously and later consciously, I put together a path to send me to law school. And, at the time I was watching Ally McBeal and LA Law and being a lawyer seemed so glamorous. And so it just made sense. And, then I got to law school and I looked around and I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't like any of these other students. I don't like what they want to do.
That took a lot of courage, by the way.
I don't know if it took so much courage as much as just sometimes you just have to run away from something that is so terrible. And you get lucky if you land in a place that's really wonderful. And so for me, I don't know if it took courage as much as really bad taste in men. I started dating a guy who was absolutely terrible for me. It's very funny.
Well, you said he had really good taste.
Well, he had really good taste in two things. The first being girlfriends, obviously, and the second being unknown presidential hopefuls from tiny southern
Right.
states. And I was like, Governor who? From where? Arkansas? Not a chance in hell is he going to win. And then I went with him to Bill Clinton's local Gainesville, Florida campaign office. And there in the corner was this black and white television with then Governor Bill Clinton, like brown hair, giving
That's
this
an
impassioned
incredible
plea.
story.
Yeah, it's just this impassioned plea about service in exchange for college tuition. And I was like, oh my God, that needs to happen. And so I dropped out of law school. I joined the campaign, and he ended up in the White House, and I ended up in the White House. And it's I think a lot of times we run from things before we know we're running towards, and I always caution people never to do that. That you should run towards something rather than running away from something. But every once in a while, it does
That's a
work out
big
okay.
thing there. That's a big takeaway, because what you ran towards became AmeriCorps. And when I was listening to that, I was thinking, man, this lady is like Forrest Gump. I'm like, oh my gosh, AmeriCorps, Bill Clinton. She ran from law school, which most people wouldn't have had the courage to do. And then it turns into Bill Clinton's campaign and AmeriCorps. That was an incredible thing. And then she runs from a 20-year professional career and turns into a national speaking tour and books that are changing people's lives. So where does that courage come from? I think listeners need to hear that, because my story is a little different. I had to experience a lot of pain to change. And what I think the secret of your story is incredible, particularly for ladies, is you don't have to go through all that pain. A lot of people have to, I don't think about dieting until my pants are tight, right? So I think one of the secrets of your story is so beautiful is you don't have to go through all that pain. So what are things that you've done, or some of your search clients have done, to avoid that? Like, where's the courage come from to do those things?
Well, I think a lot of times it comes from the people that we have around us, right? So, when your pants get too tight, you can have people around you that are like, nah, don't worry about it, just go buy bigger pants. And you'll be like, okay, I will, right? Or if you have people around you going, oh yeah, your pants are too tight, maybe we should have a salad for dinner, you'll say, okay, I will. And
Right.
it's interesting. There's a New York Times article that came out about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago that quoted a study that said that if you have obese friends, you are 57% more likely to be obese. And here's the kicker. If you have friends who smoke, you're more likely to smoke. If you have friends who drink, you're more likely to drink, right? What the people around you do is what you end up doing. What they think becomes what you think. What they normalize becomes what you normalize. And so here's the thing about it, which I think is most interesting. These people don't have to be proximate to you. Like, they don't have to be living in your house. They don't have to be the best friends that you see on the weekends. These are the people who get your attention every single week. So if there is somebody who you follow on social media and you read their posts every day, they may be closer to you than that friend you see only once a month, right? So the people who are closest to you in terms of how much of your energy they get are the ones who influence you the most. And so I don't know that I've been brave. I mean, I appreciate you continuing to say that I've got all this courage, but I think the truth is that I have friends who see the best version of me and never let me settle for mediocrity.
One of the things that you talk about a lot is purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's maybe the North Star that allows you to, or the other people that, and I think that's one of the callings that you have, is helping people find their purpose. Do you think that's what allows you to shift?
There is no question in my mind that the thing that gets me most excited in the world is seeing everyone else's greatness and being able to reflect it back on them in a way that they can finally see it for the first time, or maybe believe it enough to finally act on it. So when somebody sees that in me and shows me that I'm not living up to everything I can do, it's kind of hard to say, yeah, you're right. I could be that person, but I choose not to, right? Like if somebody said to you, it's completely within your reach to lose those 10 pounds or to write that best-selling book or to start that successful business, and they show you not just their hopes and dreams, but like a fact pattern in your past that shows that you have been able to be successful in certain areas. So why shouldn't that transition to these areas? It's kind of hard to ignore that, don't you think?
I think it is. And this is kind of where you get into the meat of, I think, both of our work. How do you peel that onion back? Now you have the problem. Now what are the solutions? Right? I was reading one in the Harvard Business Review this month. The main article is the busyness trap.
Mm-hmm.
The highlight of it is business has become a status symbol. People also consider those who exert high effort to be morally admirable, regardless of their output. I was a busy guy for a long time. I said yes to everything. So my point to that is, and maybe my question to you is, there's so many things that get in the way of our purpose. So what are things that you are doing with Wonderhell, Limitless, and anything else that you are doing to help people figure out a way to peel that onion back, to get all these distractions and speed bumps out of their way so they can really get focused on their purpose?
Yeah, so Wonderhell is organized like an amusement park because, you think success is going to be fun once you get there. Just like an amusement park, you think it's going to be super fun. You get there and you want to ride all the rides and go to all the towns, and then it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and the sun is beating on your shoulders and you're sunburned on your nose and that corn dog in your stomach is threatening to make an exit when you get on that roller coaster that you don't even want to get on.
World.
Right? So there are 3 towns of Wonderhell. There's Imposter Town, Doubtsville, and Burnout City. And the very beginning of Burnout City starts with the whack-a-mole, right? The whack-a-mole where there's just things coming at you nonstop. And so like each town has 5 rides. So the whack-a-mole, there's the bumper cars, there's, the roller coaster, all the things that happen in Burnout City when you're not quite sure, but just you're just like the giant catcher's mitt. Like everything's just coming at you and you're just saying yes to everything and trying to manage it all. And all you get
sounds exhausting.
Right? You've got all these balls in the air, and then you look up and you're like, oh, they're not balls. They're actually flaming, electric saws. Great. What am I going to do? I think it's important to learn how to say no. And I love to say yes, right? Like I am a firm believer that there is an adventure around every corner if you just look hard enough. But I think if we learn how to say yes better, then we don't actually have to learn how to say no, because there's actually less space in our lives to even say yes to things that don't make sense. So I ask people 4 questions. Number 1, will this thing help me? Okay, now, fine. That's super selfish, but like charity begins at home. You got to start somewhere. Do I see myself on the other side of this project, of this email, of this committee, of this bake sale chairmanship, whatever the ask is? Do I see myself getting closer or farther from my goals? Will this thing help me? Number 2, will this thing help someone else? So if I can't figure out how it's going to help me, but I can see a very obvious way how it's going to help somebody else, and I care about that person and I want to help them, then yeah, no brainer. It's a yes. Will this thing cause me joy? So it's not going to help me and it's not going to help anybody else, but it's going to be a hell of a good time. I'll say yes. And then number 4, and I think this is the most important question, is there somebody better suited or better qualified or more available to help with this task right now? And a lot of times we say yes to something simply because we are the most proximate heartbeat. We are the first phone call. We were the first one to read the email that was sent to 50 different people. And we say yes, when in fact, there are lots of other people who can do it. So figuring out whether or not it makes sense for us, given what we want to accomplish, I think that matters a lot. I think that matters a whole lot. But I want to go back to the premise of what you were saying before, because I do think a lot of times we say yes to things because we're afraid to be alone with the no. Like we are afraid to have empty space We're afraid to have uncertainty. And so we say yes, and we fill up the time with busyness and accolades. And, when the pandemic first happened, like a lot of people, I just stopped sleeping, right? I was super stressed. I stopped sleeping. I was like trying to rebuild my business, right? My business was flying to events and speaking on stages. Well, there were no flights, there were no events, there were no stages. So I was like rebuilding my entire business from scratch. I had 2 high school kids at home. So I was dealing with all of that. I had a husband with a super stressful job. So I was like, how do we manage like working from home and all of that stuff? So I was stressed. It was really hard. And after a few months of sleeping like 2 hours a night, 3 hours a night, I kind of just stopped forgetting things. Like I stopped remembering things. Like I couldn't remember how many teaspoons of sugar went in the pie from the time I looked at the cookbook to then looking at the sugar, right? I couldn't remember how many reps of bicep curls I had to do at the gym. Like I just couldn't, like I was not able to keep numbers in my brain. And then I started losing words. And that's when I got nervous because, I make my living with words. So I went to go see a psychiatrist and I was like, okay, I think I've broken my brain. I think I've got something wrong with me, like PTSD or like, I don't know what's happening. And he diagnosed me fairly quickly as a chronic overachiever who can't achieve right now syndrome, right? That's what he diagnosed. He's like, you're boring. There's nothing wrong with you. He's like, but you're kind of a workaholic. You're a chronic overachiever. And he's like, we can work on that. And I was like, no, man. Like, no, come on, doc. Like, that's a feature, not a bug. And he's like, no. He's like, but it's untenable. And I was like, well, but no, it's fine. I'm good. I'm
That's
fine.
one of my
He goes, yeah.
positive qualities.
Right. And then he checkmated with this. But Laura, you're here.
Right.
Well,
right.
There was no denying the obvious fact pattern that I had not slept in 3 months and I was sitting in a psychiatrist's office trying to figure out what was wrong with my brain. And he said to me then something very profound, which I know will resonate with you. He said, Laura, you don't have to give all the trophies back. And I was like, oh. He's like everything. Yeah, right? Everything you have accomplished up until now, every accolade, every trophy, every promotion, every bit of praise still is yours. You don't have to give any of them back, even if you're not actively right now collecting new ones. You can pause. You can wait. It's gonna be okay. And I literally sat there with this like image in my brain. Like, have you ever seen those commercials of Roger Federer when he's like carting the wagon of trophies off the private plane? He's got like 8 billion trophies and he's like pulling this time.
Yeah.
In my brain, I imagined myself as him carting these trophies. And I was like, it sure would be a whole lot easier to keep going if I wasn't pulling all these darn trophies with me. You don't have to give all the trophies back.
You bring up a great point. It reminds me of your TED Talk in Reno. I picture Federer with the more trophies. And then I picture myself. I picture listeners that are listening that are achievement junkies just like me and you. I mean, I was born looking for pats on the head. And then think about Tom Brady. He had it all, right?
He had it all.
But let me play one more year. Just one more year.
Yep.
And nobody's won more trophies than him. But you know what? If I just have one more year, and then that year didn't go so well, and he had the divorce, and now look, I'm not beating Tom Brady up. I mean, who wouldn't want to beat Tom Brady? But publicly, he had a rough year.
Yeah.
And that can happen it certainly happened to me. And you just shared you were very vulnerable, that you had a rough year. And I think vulnerability has become a superpower for me. And obviously you just said the same thing. But you talked about in Reno, we always want more, us achiever folks. And you talked about a way to stop that. Could you share a little bit about that? I thought that was brilliant.
Well, I think that for people who want more, I think that's great. You should keep going. Absolutely. 100%. I'm all for it. And also, if you don't, and you're like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm okay right where I am. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Like, we have this hustle porn culture that's out there that tells you to like lean in and crush it and 10x and all that stuff. And promising that on the other side of this is nirvana, right? Is happiness.
Right.
It's amazing.
Is that the girls with the Coachella girls? Is that the people you're talking about?
Oh, well, I mean, you get it from everywhere, right? Like there's like the Grant Cardone, the Tony Robbins, the Gary Vaynerchuk. I mean, Gary, not
Yeah,
so much. He used to be
all the
all about
self-help
hustle, but
stuff.
Gary's now about kindness and showing up as who you are. So he's moved into vulnerability. But there's just a lot of like bigger, better, faster, more that's out there. And then, you do have these girls at Coachella with their flower crowns that are like, follow your passion. And I
Right.
mean, follow your passion is just the world's worst advice. It's like I think
Live,
you
love.
referenced it earlier. It's the spoken word illegitimate sister of the live, laugh, love tattoo. It's like it's not even it doesn't even tell you like what to do, let alone how to
So I
get
should
there. And
cancel my tattoo appointment.
well, I mean, I'm just saying there's probably something more creative out there for you. I think you've had more of a life than the live, love, laugh girls. But, look, I think that we have to embrace the fact that we want it, right? Number one, I think that's good. Like, embrace your ambition, go for it. Wonderful, amazing.
Right.
But then we have to renegotiate our relationship because this thing that's driving us to get more comes from this place of wondering whether or not we are enough. And I think when we shift our focus from, I need to do the bigger, better, faster, more because it makes everybody else happy, and instead focus on what my own definition of success is and go for that instead, that puts us in a much different place vis-a-vis our relationship with success. If all we're seeing is like, because look, if you succeed and you get the big job and the big promotion and the big paycheck and the big corner office and the fancy car and you get to join the fancy country club, you know what you find out when you get to the fancy country club? That there's an even fancier country club across the street. And
There's
then
another door.
there's always another door. So then you want to keep going and keep going and keep going until you've got the fancier country club. And then when you're at the fancier country club, you're like, oh, there's actually an even fancier
There's
one at
another
that
door.
resort. There's another door and another door. And you end up getting to a place where you're working so hard to get to the next door and the next door and the next door that the only time you even see what's happening behind that next door is when your kids post a photo on their Instagram from the pool while you're busy working your butt off. And there's lucky them, not so lucky you. So I think the way that we stop ourselves from just continuing to want more and more and more and more is to first define what success means for us. Like, what are we actually trying to achieve? Because when you get to that place, then you're like, good, this is good. This is where I'm at. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So you could offer me the job that's going to maybe pay me more and have longer hours, but I don't want the thing that job gets me. I want to be where I am right now.
Laura, that is the key. What I think you accomplished in Reno and what you accomplished for me is that's what's important. Like, work is what I do for me and my family for our satisfaction after work. It's what I do. It's not who I am. And I got that confused. And I'm afraid that a lot of Americans get that really, really confused, that we are what we do and focus so much on our doing. And like this Harvard Business Review journal, we get so busy in the busyness trap that we forget who we are. We forget being rather than doing. And I read this somewhere. It says, don't let your wants get in the way of your haves. And I think that's what you're saying is, put a limit on the desires and the goals that you have. And I love that line that you drew, and it was in one of your presentations. We think success is this straight line, and we think the end game is the success point, but it's really the journey through it. Is that what you were trying to describe?
I mean, that's the issue with follow your passion, right? Like, we think success is the straight line from A to B. As soon as you find your passion and follow it, everything's going to be amazing. But what it doesn't tell you is that the first time it gets hard, the first time things go wrong, the first time you don't get exactly what you want, the first time you ask, you're like, well, I guess this must not be my passion because I was told everything would be easier. And our passions are going to demand a lot of us. They're going to throw us down and empty our bank accounts and teach us a lot of lessons before we actually get to enjoy them. And I think, I don't want people to follow their passion. I want them to invest in their passions. But I think if we do that and you can find success in the thing about which you're passionate, which of course is the goal for all of us, then what you do can match who you are. And it can be one and the same. I mean, I think a lot of times we get stuck because we're trying really hard to find work-life balance, where work is over there and life is over here and never the twain shall meet. And I would argue that we're not exhausted from doing too much. We're exhausted from doing too much of what doesn't matter to us at all. And so I would rather people try to find work-life alignment so that when you come home from work, you can talk about the things that you did at work to your family and be proud of those things and have them shape who you are and who they are as people. I think this idea that work has to be completely separate and that our life has to be at war with work it's exhausting, especially because we spend so many of our waking hours at work.
Yeah, Laura. What you're talking about is fulfillment. I love that. Well, Laura, there's more to get to, but we have to stop here. Coming up in my talk with Laura Gassner Otting, the much admired keynote speaker and author of Wonderhell, Laura shares what she hopes people would take away from reading her new book.
Wonderhell only presents itself to those worthy of it. So the fact that you are feeling like there is more inside of you tells you that you are capable of accomplishing it.
To learn and practice the Success Paradox lifestyle, visit GaryCCooper.com. The Success Paradox is a production of Forbes Books.